Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Anda bersama saya Nabilah Khaleeda dalam Niaga AWANI. Seperti biasa, jam ini kita akan berikan laporan berita bisnes, kewangan dan juga ekonomi. Jadi kita mulakan dengan perkembangan ini. Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim membangkitkan perihal perdagangan produk berasaskan sawit dalam pertemuannya bersama Presiden Jerman Frank-Walter Steinmeier. Menurut kenyataan pejabat Perdana Menteri dalam pertemuan pada Isnin itu, kedua-dua pemimpin turut menyentuh mengenai isu-isu berkepentingan bersama.
Perbincangan terkait isu yang menjadi kepentingan bersama kedua-dua negara antaranya melibatkan minyak sawit, produk berasaskan sawit, pendidikan serta perdagangan dan pelaburan. Untuk konteks, Malaysia mencatat nilai ekspor minyak sawit berjumlah 40.51 bilion ringgit bagi tempoh Januari hingga Ogos 2023 dengan kuantiti ekspor sebanyak 9.66 juta tan. Media juga melaporkan Menteri Peladangan dan Komoditi Datuk Seri Fadilah Yusof pada Januari tahun lalu berkata, Malaysia mungkin mempertimbangkan untuk menghentikan ekspor minyak sawit kepada Kesatuan Eropah EU sebagai tidak balas terhadap peraturan penebangan hutan baharu yang dicadangkan EU. Menurutnya, tindakan itu adalah antara pilihan yang boleh dilakukan negara bagi menangani kempen EU yang sejak beberapa tahun lepas agak negatif terhadap industri minyak sawit. Selain itu, pertemuan empat mata itu turut membincangkan permasalahan global. Perdana Menteri sekali lagi mengulangi pendirian Malaysia bersama dengan perjuangan Palestin. Kata Anwar, kedua-dua pemimpin turut menyentuh isu global dan sudah pastinya meliputi perkembangan di Palestin yang mana ia memerlukan bantuan kemanusiaan berterusan daripada semua pihak serta usaha menghentikan kekejaman rejim Zionis. Kunjungan hormat Anwar ke atas Steinmeier berlangsung di Bellevue Palace, Berlin. Ini juga merupakan kunjungan balas selepas Steinmeier mengadakan lawatan ke Malaysia tahun lalu.
Sebelum itu, Perdana Menteri diraih dalam majlis sambutan rasmi di Chancellery Jerman. Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim disambut oleh Chancellor Olaf Scholz sejurus ketibaan beliau. Sesudah itu, Perdana Menteri diraih dengan istiadat kawalan kehormat tentera Jerman Bundeswehr dari Wachbataillon. Anwar dan Scholz kemudian mengadakan pertemuan empat mata diikuti dengan sidang media bersama. Majlis sambutan berkenaan turut diiringi Menteri Pelaburan, Perdagangan dan Industri Datuk Seri Tengku Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz, Menteri Pembangunan Usahawan dan Koperasi Datuk Iwan Benedict dan Duta Besar Malaysia ke Jerman Datin Paduka Dr. Adina Kamarudin. Antara wakil kerajaan Jerman yang turut hadir ialah Setiausaha Negara bagi Hal Ehwal Ekonomi, Kewangan dan Eropah Dr. Jörg Kukis dan Duta Jerman ke Malaysia Dr. Peter Blomier.
Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim dan delegasi Malaysia mengadakan lawatan ke Siemens Energy pada Isnin. Ini merupakan agenda kedua Perdana Menteri pada selepas mesyuarat pra-majlis pada sebelah pagi.
Siemens Energy AG Siemens Energy merupakan syarikat yang membangun, mengeluarkan, menjual dan memasang turbin angin, turbin gas, turbin wap dan sistem menyeluruh dengan kapasiti multi-megawatt. Lawatan Anwar disertai Menteri Luar Datuk Seri Muhammad Hassan, Menteri Pelaburan, Perdagangan dan Industri Datuk Seri Tengku Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz dan Menteri Pembangunan Usahawan dan Koperasi Datuk Iwan Benedict. Pada Oktober tahun lalu, Siemens Energy dan Tenaga Nasional Berhad TNB menandatangani perjanjian persefahaman MOU dalam usaha untuk membangunkan teknologi hidrogen hijau di Malaysia. Untuk rekod pasaran tambahan, Siemens Energy menerima suntikan kewangan oleh kerajaan Jerman dalam bentuk jaminan kerajaan bernilai 7.5 bilion dolar euro. Jaminan ini bagi membantu Siemens mengatasi isu kewangan dan memenuhi projek-projek tertunggak.
Baik, sementara itu, Majlis Tindakan Ekonomi Negara atau M10 akan membincangkan satu mekanisme khusus untuk mengurangkan jumlah pekerja asing secara berkala. April ini, Dewan Rakyat diberitahu. Menteri Ekonomi Rafizi Ramli berkata, rancangan Malaysia ke-13 yang akan dibentangkan tahun hadapan juga akan meletakkan sasaran pengurangan jumlah pekerja asing yang lebih drastik dan beliau berharap sektor industri dan ekonomi dapat bersedia dengan keadaan itu. Dalam episod kali ini, kita nak beri tumpuan khusus untuk lihat bentuk mekanisme yang boleh dipertimbangkan dan bagaimana pengurangan pekerja asing akan memberi impak kepada pasaran buruh dan juga keseluruhan rantaian ekonomi. Jadi sudah bersedia untuk mengulas lebih lanjut. Yang bersedia dalam talian ialah Datuk Syamsuddin Bardan, Pengarah Eksekutif Persekutuan Majikan-Majikan Malaysia MEF. Selamat pagi, Datuk.
Selamat pagi. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Mungkin pertama sekali boleh kongsikan apakah perubahan asas yang kita perlukan untuk kita kurangkan bilangan pekerja asing secara berkesan di sesebuah negara?
Yang paling penting adalah untuk kita memastikan bahawa kita telah membuat satu prasarana yang betul terhadap pasaran buruh kita supaya kita dapat sebenarnya beralih kepada pengurangan pekerja asing. Ya. Dan bila saya katakan tentang prasarana yang betul adalah kita mesti mempunyai pekerja-pekerja tempatan yang mahu untuk mengisi ruang-ruang kosong yang ditinggalkan oleh pekerja asing. Tetapi of course agak sukar untuk pekerja tempatan memenuhi pekerjaan berkenaan, melainkan kita meningkatkan pekerjaan berkenaan kepada yang lebih tinggi lagi dan juga kita memerlukan kemahiran yang lebih tinggi. Ini bermakna majikan-majikan perlu untuk memodernkan operasi mereka, proses mereka. Mereka perlu untuk membawa masuk teknologi-teknologi baru dan of course kebanyakan syarikat di Malaysia ni adalah MSME. Jadi mereka ini adalah kecil dan sederhana dan juga mikro dan mereka memerlukan hanya suntikan dana dan kita berharap agar kerajaan dapat memastikan adanya soft loan yang boleh pada majikan-majikan berkenaan supaya mereka dapat memperkenalkan teknologi-teknologi baru berkenaan. Dan juga untuk para pekerja, mereka harus meningkatkan kemahiran mereka dan juga mungkin perlu untuk ada kemahiran baru supaya mereka dapat sebenarnya bekerjasama dengan majikan untuk menjalankan operasi syarikat dengan lebih baik lagi dalam keadaan proses yang baru itu.
Baik, seperti yang Datuk katakan tadi ialah pertama mungkin memadankan dan juga memajukan struktur perniagaan dan juga termasuklah teknologi itu sendiri dan antara yang kedua ialah tenaga buruh perlu tingkatkan kemahiran. Tapi kita nak tahu juga dari sektor ataupun dari side pemain industri itu sendiri, bolehkah mereka bekerjasama dengan inisiatif kerajaan untuk tangani cabaran yang berkaitan dengan pengurangan tenaga kerja asing ini?
Itu boleh dilakukan. Dan kita berharap agar pengurangan berkenaan dapat dibuat secara berkala. Bukan sesuatu yang mengatakan bahawa kita akan kurangkan terus, tetapi kita berikan masa yang sesuai untuk majikan-majikan itu beralih kepada keperluan baru. Jadi bila majikan diberi masa yang sesuai untuk beralih kepada suasana baru, saya pasti bahawa mereka akan dapat bekerjasama dengan baik dengan pihak kerajaan supaya pada akhirnya kita akan dapat mengurangkan kehadiran pekerja asing itu pada tahap minima sebenarnya.
Jadi mungkin apa boleh kita mulakan dengan pekerjaan dari sektor mana, Datuk?
Ya, sebenarnya ke semua sektor. Sekarang ini kalau kita lihat di sektor pembuatan, perladangan dan juga construction dan juga perkhidmatan, banyak pekerja asing diperlukan, kira-kira 1.8 juta sekarang ini dan kita tahu bahawa kuota berkenaan sebenarnya adalah apa yang diperuntukkan dalam RMK 12. Jadi menuju kepada RMK 13 nanti, kita berharap agar kerajaan dapat menetapkan apakah kuota yang seharusnya kita perlukan dan juga pengurangan berkenaan akan dilakukan secara berkala supaya memberikan majikan masa yang sesuai untuk kita beralih kepada prasarana yang baru. Jadi kita tidak mahu nanti bila dilakukan secara mendadak, ramai majikan akan mengatakan bahawa mereka kekurangan pekerja dan ini sudah pasti akan menjejaskan perniagaan mereka. Dan kita berharap ini tidak akan berlaku bila kita beralih kepada suasana baru nanti dan juga kita berharap bahawa pihak kerajaan menangani dengan serius kehadiran pekerja-pekerja asing tanpa izin. Kerana kita lihat bahawa kita ada 1.8 juta pekerja yang sah sebenarnya dan menteri mengatakan bahawa kita mungkin ada kira-kira 3.5 juta pekerja sama ada sah atau tidak. Jadi di sini kita ada mempunyai ramai pekerja yang tidak sah dan ini harus ditangani dengan lebih baik lagi, dengan lebih serius lagi dan kita tahu bahawa kebanyakan mereka juga menjalankan perniagaan. Dan kita sebenarnya melihat tindakan kerajaan yang pada masa ini cuba membentras peniaga-peniaga dari kalangan pekerja asing itu sesuatu yang amat baik dan harus diteruskan lagi supaya pada akhirnya tidak ada pekerja asing yang menjalankan perniagaan sebenarnya.
Jadi apa langkah yang boleh kita laksanakan untuk kita pastikan bahawa pengurangan tenaga kerja asing ini tidak memberi kesan negatif yang berdadak pertama dan juga memberi kesan negatif yang besar kepada industri yang bergantung kepada buruh asing terutamanya seperti sektor peladangan yang Datuk sebutkan tadi, dan juga bagaimana dasar dan juga polisi dapat tangani kebimbangan dan rungutan industri dan juga individu yang terjejas akibat isu ini.
Ya, kita sebenarnya harus memberikan satu timeline yang jelas. Bila kita mahu mengurangkan kehadiran pekerja asing berkenaan dan melihat sama ada kita telah bersedia atau tidak untuk melaksanakan dasar berkenaan. Jadi kalau kita telah tetapkan masa tetapi kita melihat bahawa majikan memerlukan sedikit masa lagi, saya rasa kita harus ada flexibility di situ, kerana kalau kita berkeras untuk mengurangkan pekerja asing tetapi kita tidak ada pekerja untuk membuat pekerjaan berkenaan, sudah pasti ia akan menjejaskan operasi syarikat berkenaan. Jadi kalau kita lihatlah pada masa ini banyak juga rungutan-rungutan dibuat, terutamanya di sektor peladangan mengatakan bahawa mereka kekurangan kira-kira 40,000 pekerja. Jadi kalau 40,000 pekerja itu tak ada, getah tak dapat ditoreh, kelapa sawit tidak dapat diturunkan, dan ini sudah tentu merupakan satu kerugian besar kepada sektor peladangan. Jadi sekarang ini telah ada usaha untuk membawa masuk pekerja-pekerja asing baru untuk memenuhi kehendak peladangan. Begitu juga di sektor perkhidmatan sebagai contoh, kita tahu bahawa ramai di antara pekerja-pekerja hotel sebagai contohnya tidak mahu datang semula ke sektor hotel. Mereka lebih gemar untuk berada dalam gig ekonomi. Jadi pada masa ini kalau kita lihat di sektor perhotelan, kalau kita mahu check in ke hotel, terutamanya pukul 12 sebagai contoh, tapi bilik kita akan cuma siap dalam pukul 3 hingga 4 petang kerana kita tidak ada mempunyai pekerja yang cukup untuk memastikan bahawa bilik itu telah dikemaskan dengan baik. Jadi ini adalah ciri-ciri yang harus dilihat oleh pihak kerajaan bila mereka mahu melaksanakan sistem pengurangan pekerja asing berkenaan.
Baik, terima kasih diucapkan kepada Datuk Syamsuddin Bardan, Pengarah Eksekutif Persekutuan Majikan Malaysia MEF. Semoga kita dapat saksikan penstrukturan oleh kerajaan yang tidak memberikan kejutan kepada industri dan sektor ekonomi untuk kita mengurangkan pekerja asing di Malaysia bermula April ini. Baik, kita akan berhenti rehat seketika, kembali selepas ini.
Macam betul je kan? Cerita sebenarnya lepas pakai helmet, kulit kepala berpeluh dan berminyak. Kalau tak dijaga, rambut boleh gugur. Dove Micellar Baharu kini mengandungi vitamin biotin untuk rambut 10 kali lebih kuat.
Lepas ni kita terawih ya? Pergi mandi dulu?
Baik, Mak.
Guna mandian Lifebuoy, berkesan melawan kuman punca bau badan. Rasai kesegaran 12 jam. Lifebuoy, segar dan sedia beribadah tanpa kuman. Perasan tak, rambut pelakon drama kita, apa-apa jadi pun tetap boom. Gaduh, rambut tetap boom. Rambut anda pun boleh sentiasa boom dengan Sunsilk Collagen dan asid hyaluronic. Rambut tetap boom dalam apa jua keadaan.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda, tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada.
Bertemu kembali. Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim menegaskan kedudukan Malaysia sebagai sebuah negara merdeka dan pada masa sama menyatakan bahawa Malaysia terbuka kepada kerjasama strategik yang memberi manfaat dua hala. Beliau berkata demikian dalam sidang media bersama Chancellor Jerman Olaf Scholz pada Isnin. Dan untuk laporan lanjut mengenai sidang media bersama kedua-dua pemimpin di Berlin, kita bersama rakan setugas Irfan Faruqi.
Terima kasih rakan tugas di Pusat Penyerahan Asia. Kami baru sahaja selesai pertemuan bersama dengan Menteri Pertahanan Datuk Seri Muhammad Hassan, yang mana antara lain Menteri Pertahanan memberikan komentar berkenaan dengan kenyataan yang amat berhormat Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim berkenaan dengan pendirian Malaysia dalam isu berkenaan dengan Palestin. Dan menariknya, sepanjang sidang media di antara dua pemimpin, iaitu Perdana Menteri Malaysia dan juga Chancellor Persekutuan Jerman Olaf Scholz, kebanyakan daripada masa yang diperuntukkan untuk sidang media bersama tersebut memberikan tumpuan kepada isu serantau di Timur Tengah, iaitu sokongan Malaysia kepada Palestin dan juga sokongan oleh Jerman kepada Israel, yang mana baru sahaja diumumkan oleh negara Jerman untuk menambah lebih banyak lagi perbelanjaan untuk tujuan persenjataan kepada negara Israel. Tetapi untuk memberikan rangkuman yang lebih jelas dan menyeluruh berkenaan dengan sidang media antara kedua-dua pemimpin, kita harus nyatakan bahawa pada permulaan persidangan tersebut lebih tertumpu kepada soal pelaburan, yang mana Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim memberikan penjelasan secara ekstensif bagaimana Malaysia mampu menjadi sebuah negara yang sangat menarik dalam tujuan dan konteks pelaburan oleh negara-negara pengeksport dan juga pelabur-pelabur khususnya di Jerman. Dan usaha itu bukan sahaja digerakkan di peringkat persekutuan tapi juga di negeri-negeri termasuklah Sarawak dalam usaha untuk membawa sektor peralihan tenaga ke aras yang berikutnya dalam konteks negara Malaysia. Dan ia diikuti dengan beberapa soalan diajukan oleh media antarabangsa berkenaan dengan bagaimanakah pendirian Malaysia terhadap sokongan kepada Palestin, adakah itu akan memberikan kesan kepada hubungan dagang di antara Malaysia dan juga Jerman secara khususnya. Dan menariknya Perdana Menteri menyatakan bahawa memperakui bahawa hubungan Malaysia dengan Palestin lebih erat seperti mana hubungan di antara Jerman dan Israel itu erat. Oleh itu, beliau menyatakan bahawa tidak wajar untuk dijadikan hubungan ataupun sokongan sebuah negara itu sebagai hambatan untuk meningkatkan lagi hubungan perdagangan di antara dua hala. Dan Perdana Menteri menyatakan bahawa Jerman merupakan rakan dagang yang sangat penting dalam konteks ekspor Malaysia kepada Jerman, yang mana nilainya itu sudah pun meningkat pada Januari 2024. Dan selain daripada itu, Malaysia juga merupakan rakan dagang penting kepada Jerman di rantau Asia Tenggara. Itu sedikit sebanyak memberikan gambaran berkenaan apa yang berlaku sepanjang sidang media di antara kedua pemimpin. Tapi untuk hari yang berikutnya dan jam-jam berikutnya, Perdana Menteri akan mengadakan beberapa lagi siri pertemuan dengan Kapten Industri, termasuklah Future SME Future, sebuah program yang mana akan dihadiri oleh Perdana Menteri dan akan berikan ucap pertama, yang antara lain SME dalam konteks Jerman disebut sebagai Mittelstand, yang memberikan maksud bahawa setiap perniagaan yang dimulakan oleh keluarga itu sangat bermakna bagi pengusaha dan juga pengasasnya, kerana ia ditubuhkan oleh sebuah keluarga dan ia diwarisi oleh keluarga tersebut. Dan lebih menarik lagi, Mittelstand di Jerman itu merangkumi 99% daripada perusahaan yang menghasilkan dan mengeluarkan pelbagai produk bernilai tinggi, berteknologi tinggi dan sebahagiannya diekspor daripada luar Jerman, dan itu memberikan nilai tambah kepada ekonominya. Itu antara perkara yang harus kita berikan tumpuan dan menilai bagaimanakah Malaysia juga boleh belajar daripada modal tersebut. Dan itu saya laporan untuk waktu ini. Kembali ke rakan tugas di Pusat Penyerahan Asia.
Baik, terima kasih Irfan di Berlin, Germany. Kita akan teruskan bersama Irfan untuk perkembangan seterusnya. Baik, kita akan teruskan dengan pergerakan ringgit, di mana ringgit ditutup hampir tidak berubah namun berada di paras tinggi berbanding dolar Amerika Syarikat pada Isnin dalam keadaan sentimen berhati-hati selepas kenaikan berturut-turut minggu lepas, kata ahli ekonomi. Pada 6 petang, ringgit meningkat kepada 4.6805 atau 6830 berbanding dolar Amerika daripada 4.6815 ketika ditutup pada Jumaat minggu lepas. Jadi untuk hari ini setakat 12 Mac 2024, saya boleh kongsikan pergerakan ringgit setakat jam 9.19 pagi ialah mengukuh kepada paras 4.679. Ini dalam jangka masa 1 tahun. Kita dapat lihat trend meningkat itu, menaik itu ringgit, dan ini menunjukkan ringgit itu melemah. Tapi untuk hari ini kita dapat saksikan trend penurunan bermula dari Februari 22 hari bulan. Kita dapat saksikan ringgit itu mengukuh. Bila trend itu menurun, ia menunjukkan ringgit itu mengukuh, dan ini merupakan positif, berita yang positif untuk pergerakan ringgit negara. Jadi kalau kita boleh tunjukkan juga dalam jangka masa sebulan, kita dapat lihat trend pengukuhan itu jelas bermula pada seperti yang saya sebutkan tadi, lebih kurang 21-22 hari bulan. Kita dapat saksikan trend pengukuhan ringgit itu berlaku dalam setakat dalam jangka masa seminggu dan juga seminggulah bermula 21 sehingga ke hari ini 12 Mac. Itu yang saya boleh kongsikan setakat untuk pergerakan ringgit hari ini. Saya akan teruskan dengan Bursa Malaysia ditutup tinggi bagi hari ketiga berturut-turut pada Isnin, disokong oleh belian berterusan dalam kebanyakan saham. Wajaran tinggi di tengah-tengah sentimen bercampur-campur di pasaran serantau, kata seorang peniaga. Pada 5 petang, FTSE Bursa Malaysia KLCI atau FBM KLCI meningkat 4.85 mata kepada 1,544.71 daripada paras penutup 1,539.86 pada Jumaat minggu lepas. Saya akan kongsikan pergerakan bursa ataupun prestasi bursa untuk setakat hari ini jam 9.05 pagi. Kita dapat saksikan warna merah menunjukkan prestasi bursa itu menurun dengan 0.07% ataupun 1.07 mata. Jadi kalau boleh saya tunjukkan dalam jangka masa 5 hari, kita dapat saksikan peningkatan sedikit daripada paras 1,500 lebih kurang 30 sehinggalah mencecah 1,550, tapi masih melepasi paras 1,520. Kita dapat saksikan pergerakan ini dengan lebih jelas dalam jangka masa, mungkin dalam jangka masa 1 bulan. Kita dapat saksikan pergerakan dari antara 1,520 dan juga 1,560 yang tertinggi yang hampir mencecah 1,560 itu pada tarikh lebih kurang 27 hari bulan 2 2024 pada bulan Februari lah. Dan kita akan berikan laporan yang paling terkini untuk prestasi bursa dari masa ke semasa. Keazaman untuk mencari sumber pendapatan stabil dan ditambah pula dengan pengetahuan selok-belok dunia perniagaan yang memerlukan kepakaran dalam bidang teknologi maklumat membolehkan seorang usahawan di Rawang berjaya menembusi pasaran bukan sahaja di kawasan sekitar itu, malah di seluruh negara menerusi promosi menggunakan pelbagai aplikasi media sosial dan kemajuan internet. Bermula dengan konsep mobile spa atau spa bergerak dari rumah ke rumah, Nur Ain Firdaus atau lebih mesra disapa sebagai Nur Ain kini berjaya menjana pendapatan lumayan hasil daripada perniagaan spa miliknya, Elsian Aesthetics dan Wellness Spa.
Anak kedua dari 3 adik-beradik ini sememangnya mempunyai minat yang cukup mendalam dalam bidang kecantikan wanita sejak di bangku sekolah lagi. Selain melakukan pemasaran dan promosi yang berkesan serta berterusan melalui platform media sosial seperti Facebook, Instagram dan TikTok, berkait dengan kerajinan beliau berkongsi tips kecantikan dan kesihatan sebagai konten di dunia digital juga telah menjadikan perniagaan spa beliau semakin berkembang maju dan mendapat permintaan yang tinggi.
Untuk customer yang melalui digital platform ni, kita ada bagi macam promotion untuk diorang yang dapat means yang diorang yang booking melalui platform digital ni, diorang dapat diskaun yang lain dengan customer yang walk in. Dan biasanya daripada platform digital ni diorang akan dapat promotion tu lebih awal. Sebab kalau untuk customer yang walk in ke center, informasi tu kadang lambat sampai kan, diorang kena datang lepas tu baru kita explain promotion. Kalau yang digital platform ni diorang akan dapat info diskaun tu lebih awal daripada yang walk in ke center. Untuk treatment wellness ni lebih meluas coverage treatment. Kalau melalui digital ni kan, so kita boleh capai customer yang luar daripada kawasan. Kalau ke center tu lebih untuk customer yang terdekat. Kalau melalui platform digital ni macam lebih meluaslah, keluar-luar tu pun boleh dapatkan rawatan.
Menimbas pengalaman sebelum menjadi usahawan berjaya, Nur Ain mula dengan kerjaya sebagai juruterapi di beberapa buah spa kecantikan dan kelangsingan badan sekitar Kuala Lumpur dan Pulau Pinang. Pengalaman ini secara tidak langsung mengasah bakatnya menjalankan perniagaan mobile spa pada tahun 2013 hingga berjaya membuka sebuah pusat spa sejak tahun 2018. Ia terbukti apabila pusat spa dan spa mobile yang dikendalikannya semuanya diuruskan secara solo. Selain banyak membaca, membuat pendidikan dan berkait dengan rawatan dalaman serta luaran wanita, Nur Ain juga sering mengikuti pelbagai program seminar dan kelas kemahiran spa anjuran pihak kerajaan maupun swasta bagi menambah ilmu pengetahuan sedia ada. Hal ini mampu memantapkan rawatan yang diberikan supaya dapat melakukan mengikut cara yang sepatutnya. Selain proses rawatan spa yang dijalankan akan lebih berkesan dan efektif untuk pelanggannya. Kini, kecanggihan e-dagang dan juga pengiklanan seperti Google Ads, segala informasi pusat spa kecantikan dan kesihatan Elsian Aesthetics lebih mudah dicapai.
Macam betul je kan? Cerita sebenarnya lepas pakai helmet, kulit kepala berpeluh dan berminyak. Kalau tak dijaga, rambut boleh gugur. Dove Micellar Baharu kini mengandungi vitamin biotin untuk rambut 10 kali lebih kuat.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda, tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada.
Sarawak disasar menjadi negeri pengeksport padi menjelang tahun 2030. Sekitar 200 penduduk kampung hampalan singgah mata Pulau Bumbung sempurna menerima bantuan pemeriksaan kesihatan secara percuma. Seterusnya, Kerajaan Sarawak menyasarkan ekspor pertama gas hidrogen pada tahun 2027.
Sabah Electricity Sdn Bhd SASB mempertukar lebih RM500,000 untuk melaksanakan projek bantuan mesra rakyat BMR.
Welcome back to AWANI, and we'll continue with some international updates. The US Federal Reserve will cut its key interest rate in June, according to a stronger majority of economists in the latest Reuters poll, as the central bank waits for more data to confirm whether inflation is headed convincingly toward its 2% target. The survey also showed respondents saw it more likely that if Fed policymakers change their rate projections at the March 19 to 20th meeting, the median views would signal fewer cuts this year, not more. In his latest testimony to the Congress, Fed Chair Jerome Powell reiterated policy easing would likely be appropriate at some point this year. But still, sticky inflation and a very resilient labour market could prevent an early rate cut. After a brief period of betting the first cut would come in March and then shifting bets to May, financial market traders are more in line with comments from Fed officials, with rate futures also now priced for a first rate reduction in June. Unlike pricing in markets, most economists in Reuters surveys since September have been consistently forecasting a cut around the middle of 2024 and have grown even more convinced in the latest survey. While all 108 economies in the latest Reuters March 5th and 11th poll predicted the Fed funds rate to stay in 5.25% till 5.50% range next week, a two-thirds majority said the first rate cut would come in June compared to just over half in February. American companies are set to announce investments amounting to more than $1 billion in the Philippines, U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo said during an official visit to Manila on Monday. Raimondo is heading a two-day trade and investment mission, the first of its kind for the Philippines. The delegation includes executives from 22 companies, including United Airlines, Alphabet's Google, Visa, KKR Asia Pacific, and Microsoft. The investments will span areas like solar energy, electric vehicles, and digitization. U.S. efforts to deepen economic ties with the Philippines come in tandem with increased cooperation in defense. Both U.S. President Joe Biden and Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. are keen to counter what they see as aggressive actions by China in the South China Sea and near Taiwan. Raimondo said Washington's commitment to expanding trade and investment in the Philippines extends to the larger Indo-Pacific region through the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, a 14-nation US-led group. Raimondo reiterated the United States has no intention of decoupling from China, but it would not be allowed access to Washington's advanced technology. She also reaffirmed the United States alliance with the Philippines, calling it ironclad. The Philippines has a 73-year-old mutual defense treaty with the US, making it Washington's oldest treaty ally in the Asia-Pacific region.
The U.S.-Philippine alliance is ironclad. It has sustained over 72 years, and we remain steadfast friends and increasingly partners in prosperity. Just look at the many American companies that provide employment and professional development for thousands of Filipinos, putting them on a path to higher paying jobs. In fact, on this trip alone, these companies are announcing over $1 billion of U.S. investments, including creating educational opportunities to over 30 million Filipinos.
The S&P 500 and Nasdaq ended down slightly on Monday, with investors preparing for this week's consumer and producer price data, which they hope will provide a better idea of whether the Federal Reserve can begin cutting interest rates in the coming months. Boeing shares eased 3%, and U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said on Monday he expects the plane maker to cooperate investigations by the Justice Department and National Transportation Safety Board into the Alaska Airlines 737 MAX 9 mid-air emergency on January 5th. The industrial sector also was lower while the Dow edged higher. U.S. consumer price data for February is due on Tuesday, with expectations for a monthly increase of 0.4% and 3.1% on an annual basis. The U.S. producer price report is due on Thursday, and data showing signs of a robust economy slowed the stocks market's rally last month as traders pushed back expectations on the timing of the first Fed rate cut to June from March. The Fed's next rate-setting meeting is next week, and the Dow Jones rose 46.97 points, or 0.12%. The S&P 500 lost 5.75 points, or 0.11%, and the Nasdaq Composite dropped 65.84 points, or 0.41%. NVIDIA, whose chips power artificial intelligence, has been sued by 3 authors who said it used their copyrighted books without permission to train its Nemo, an AI platform. Brian Keane, Abdi Nazemian and Stewart Onan said their works were part of a dataset of about 196,640 books that helped train Nemo to simulate ordinary written language before being taken down in October due to reported copyright infringement. In a proposed class action filed on Friday night in San Francisco federal court, the authors said the takedown reflects NVIDIA's having admitted it trained Nemo on the dataset and thereby infringed their copyrights. They are seeking unspecified damages for people in the United States whose copyrighted works helped train Nemo's so-called large language models in the last 3 years. The lawsuit drags NVIDIA into a growing body of litigation by writers as well as the New York Times over generative AI, which creates new content based on inputs such as text, images, and sounds. Other companies sued over the technology have included OpenAI, which created the AI platform ChatGPT, and its partner Microsoft. Japan's economy avoided a technical recession, and revised government data showed on Monday, even though the upward change in the fourth quarter was weaker than expected and highlighted concerns about the sluggish economic recovery. Japan's revised gross domestic product, or GDP, expanded at an annualized clip of 0.4% in the October till December period from the previous quarter, better than the initial estimate for a 0.4% contraction. It was, however, below economists' median forecast for a 1.1% uptick in a Reuters poll. On a quarter-on-quarter basis, GDP grew 0.1% compared with the initial reading of a drop of 0.1%. Drop and median forecast for a 0.3% rise. The upward revision came amid growing market expectations the Bank of Japan could ditch its negative interest rates as early as this month, fueled in part by board members' recent hawkish comments that Japan was moving towards the central bank's 2% inflation target. Capital expenditure, which increased 2% quarter-on-quarter, anchored the upward revision. It was better than the preliminary 0.1% decrease, but still below a median market forecast of 2.5% rise. All right, we'll go for a short break. We'll be right back after this.
Macam betul je kan? Cerita sebenarnya lepas pakai helmet, kulit kepala berpeluh dan berminyak. Kalau tak dijaga, rambut boleh gugur. Dove Micellar Baharu kini mengandungi vitamin biotin untuk rambut 10 kali lebih kuat.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda, tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada.
Terdapat sedikit kebimbangan berkaitan dengan peningkatan kos sara hidup dan juga bagaimana untuk orang ramai mengimbangi peningkatan kos itu dengan perbelanjaan hari raya nanti. Sepanjang bulan Ramadan nanti, cuaca dijangka panas kering sepanjang 30 hari berkenaan.
Peniaga makanan di Bazar Ramadan dinasihatkan supaya jujur dalam menyediakan makanan, terutama dari sudut kualiti dan penjagaan makanan.
Thank you for tuning in on AWANI. Right now, I'm broadcasting from KL Hilton, right at the center of the Kuala Lumpur. And earlier, we just heard the announcement of the report from Invest KL on its the amount of report for investment 2023, which is 8.7 billion ringgit, and increase of 300% as compared to the previous year, 2022, and that's a ground-breaking record-setting for the Invest KL. And we would like to speak to the right authority and the best person to that's seated next to me. Actually, he himself is the CEO of Invest KL, the Chief Executive Officer, Dato' Muhammad Azmi Zulkifli. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. How are you?
Thank you. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining, and perhaps anything to say with this amount of investment? What can you say about Malaysia and for the whole nation?
Yeah. Firstly, alhamdulillah, I think it's a big testament with regards to this location as a preferred destination of choice. That has been, the momentum has been building up over the years. Yeah? It's not just an overnight activity, and we see this trajectory of investments positively coming in, exploring new activities, and specifically last year have been incredible. I am actually lost for words on how to describe those investments, but certainly credit to my team for their tenacity, their consistency, as well as their resilience to target the right investments into Greater Kuala Lumpur and Malaysia as a whole.
But with this amount, which sector actually that you see the most substantial increase in FDI for 2023, and how does it attributes to the attractiveness to the international investments?
Yeah, the investments in services are usually not capital expenditure focused, right? So last year was quite unprecedented as we saw two investments that were leaning heavy towards a combination of operational expenditure as well as capital expenditure. And these investments are driven and focused on the IoT, the big data, the analytics, as well as some of the services that are more professional in nature to re-engineer activities, re-engineer businesses. So that's quite an important trajectory to look at that. Yeah? It's also quite amazing to see investors coming in, creating 3,000 jobs, and these jobs are executive type jobs, very focused on technology as well as on skill, and this has been quite outstanding. Within those investments too, yes, there is one investment that's a bit more capital focused, which is the Chinese automobile company coming in it's not about marketing and selling their cars. It's about looking at how they can leverage on Malaysia's position to reach out to markets, especially on the right-hand drive sector. Yeah? Coming in, doing their innovation and R&D to focus on our right-hand drive capability and how they can drive those activities. So technology have been key, industrial automation have been key, big data have been key as well in terms of the investments from 2023.
And if I can add to that, about 8,329 high-skilled jobs created with the amount of investments and on FDI for 2023, and how does this increase in FDI can actually elevate the Malaysia's broader economic development goals? We have a Madani framework, and also we have NIMP, New Industrial Master Plan. And what does Invest KL's roles to actually help to further elevate this framework and also goals?
Yeah, the Madani economic framework is important in a sense that when we talk about the bigger agendas of the government, it's good to mention some of the pillars of focus in the Madani framework: sustainability, inclusivity, as well as capabilities and innovation. So these are important statements that are placed out there, and will be visible for investors, for the rakyat alike, to look at how we can sync up, how we can realign discussions on investment, how we can realign the type of jobs that will be created into those facets of development. When looking at that too, it also gives the companies a little bit more of a predictability, that if I am on this particular agenda, I can work with the right agencies within the government to drive those agendas forward. When I'm looking at exploring new investments as an MNC, I know that I can also lean towards other topics and agendas, and work with the government to see how we can design policies, propose newer investments in that particular landscape. So I must say that the clarity of that has helped in our communication with investors, and that have also been demonstrated by the government in the many trade missions that they have conducted, either by the Prime Minister or by the MITI Minister himself. And to layer upon that as well is to give a little bit more traction and reflection to some of the trade agreements that have been signed over the past years, the CPTPP and RCEP. It needs a bit of connecting and lending in Malaysia, and to me, the Madani economic framework gives that grounding or rooting into how we will connect and how we can present that better to potential investors.
And perhaps you could share on how do you envision this FDI impacting Malaysia's, and not like you said just now, the job market. We have created more than 8,000, but future, what are your goals for job creations?
Yeah, we thought of looking at how we can communicate better with regards to all these activities and focus. To take us a more macro perspective, today 58% of Malaysia's GDP comprise of the services sector, right? Where do we go from here? Right. Same time too, we've got to realize that we are producing a large number of graduates, in many fields, in many fields, and this is where appropriately where do they go to from that standpoint, and putting all that together is the need for local companies, foreign investors, FDI, DDI to come in to create those type of jobs to attract this kind of activities in this present moment. When we look at that too, is where we should leverage on the talent today. The events of the past 2-3 years have accelerated digital adoption and technology, and there have been topics about AI last year that have been running around everywhere. Yeah, so that's where probably companies can explore and what best to work with the newer generation on these topics. For lack of better word, trust them on the technology, right? Because we are probably, myself, a little bit behind, to look at the trajectory of how they want to design their future, how they want to plan for their growth, how they want to define the world for them to live in the future.
But it's interesting to know as well, living in this challenging global landscape, economic landscape, what's InvestKL strategies to not just we have other regional investors from, as in regional competitors in investing hub. So what is InvestKL strategies to achieve this another step of milestone for last year, 2023?
We love to focus on what we are best at as a country. Yeah, what we are best at as a country. It's well reported out there. Same time, we have to understand how we want to attract investors and how we want them to stay in Malaysia. And I will quote investor experience. That's something that we drive upon. Investor experience simply means that it's about their pre-investment experience and facilitation, their investment journey proper, and their post-investment support. I think that's very critical. Companies are no different than anybody. It's run by humans. That's where we should layer the livability aspect. We should layer all the ease of doing business aspects as well, to ensure that Greater Kuala Lumpur and Malaysia continue to be that location of choice. We know all the other narratives, connectivity, infrastructure, diverse talent availability, the English common law that has helped with many contracts, negotiation, all that is note. Then that's where we need to layer all this, and Malaysia has to be that offering to see how we can strike that balance between what's happening out there in the world, how we can leverage and capture these companies. And most importantly, I'm proud to say that many of our investors today, they want to be a spokesperson for the country, right?
Okay, amazing.
On a regular basis, we have potential investors contacting us, right? I want to come in, I want to do this, I want to do that. But I just don't want to hear the government speaking. I want to talk to the industry. And many have put up their hands. Let me host this company, let me host that company. I want to share with them my experience. Because the MNC's experience are not just about good. There are ups and downs, which is good, right? The ups and downs, the expectation and things like that, which gives a little bit more of a real life flavor instead of just a brochure story. And I must thank many MNCs for volunteering to host potential investors.
And we have gotten Canada for the first time, investing for the first time in Malaysia. Congrats for that.
Thank you.
And maybe in light with the current geopolitical tensions, how does InvestKL manage with that? And also, how do you strategize to attract more FDIs and to also avoid downturns?
When we look at our history, we have also some strong foundations with certain regions or countries with regards to investment and the investment portfolio that have given us a lot of platform and stage to leapfrog from, right? What's important today is our positioning as that neutral location to be supportive with any type of investments that's aligned to our agenda. Now, when we look at that too, it's also to see how we can be that alternative location. right? There was so much talk over time about China plus one, right? It's not just about manufacturing; it's about services as well. Services having the ability to locate their activities from Malaysia. And when we look at some of the investors that are here today, many of them are operating here under multiple languages, but driven by Malaysians. That's an amazing fact that they have done and they have looked at from that angle. With that neutrality too, I guess we provide a best of both worlds, right? In the context of investments, in the context of we are present in important trade agreements with many parts of the world, and certainly significantly this year is a celebration of Malaysia-China 50th relationship. A lot of events are being lined up with regards to closing that collaboration and that spirit, and I must credit the ministry for maintaining a very well balanced approach that helps us to pitch, to position Greater Kuala Lumpur and Malaysia as a location, and at the same time they would have certain feel of comfort as well about how they can come in, they can invest, their investments are secure over here, that Malaysia is not going to lean here or there in terms of the trajectory of the geopolitical activities.
Earlier you mentioned about the technological investment, and part of that is the AI, generative AI, and I was impressed by your entrance earlier for the presentation, and maybe with the collaboration with international investors and also local business and also startups, how do you further innovate, or in terms of technology transfer, how do you communicate with that businesses and also startups?
Yeah. InvestKL for the past 4 years now has a particular program called the Greater Kuala Lumpur Life Lab. It's about working with the investors and grounding them on R&D and innovation activities, working with local universities as well as the small medium enterprises. So that's a very important aspect. The rule is very simple. When an investor lands into the country, we want to increase the breadth of their investment, right? As they do more and more activities in a country, it's more difficult for them to uproot and move to another country with regards to competition and so on. So that's a very key perspective. What we are looking at also now is to see how we can close the gap even further by leveraging on these activities, access for SMEs to work with MNCs. That's an important part, because we see that there will be tremendous win-win on both sides. Take one topic, ESG, right? MNCs needs to embrace ESG all throughout their value chain. Some of these SMEs are part of the value chain. If they do not meet the requirements or the practices of ESG, the chain breaks and it will affect the MNC, and that's where we see that then the closer collaboration needs to be done in that perspective. A little bit behind will be work with us to work with other agencies that are more focused on startups, right? Because MNCs may not be able to work with a startup directly unless they are hosted in a lab. However, when the startup becomes to a certain stage of their business cycle, that's where we would imagine MNCs would be very beneficial to work with these companies that have a proven track record of 3 to 5 years and ready to provide certain form of innovation, technology, working with MNCs. So it has to be working with other agencies too, to look at a specific agenda, specific activity, and us coming together to put that whole equation.
Interesting. I would like to expand more and talk a little bit more on ESG, especially when it comes to bridging the gap between MNCs and also the SMEs when it comes to ESG, because it's the way forward now, right? So how do you ensure that both of these can work together and work aligned towards these ESG goals?
Yeah. Malaysia has been driving and putting in a number of initiatives to increase the awareness on ESG. That's a good start here. It's driven by the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. Yeah. The next wave or the next move forward is to look at how we can integrate those activities into the respective associations within the country. Right. Many companies today are serving the value chains of global MNCs. But sometimes these MNCs does not call this activity ESG. And that's probably where the gap in communication is. To them, this is a best practice. That I do this, I care for the environment, I ensure labor regulations are being followed and so on. So it's not termed as an ESG. So we've got to close the understanding over here and to see how we can leverage with many multinationals that have their supply chains over here, and to see how we can leverage those moving forward. Same time, this is where probably we are lacking a little bit, the knowledge sharing. Yeah? I've seen and we've met many MNCs that say that this SME, that SME and so on are doing well within their scope of ESG. But this has to be shared, because sometimes ESG topics can be a little bit over amplified and over complicate, right? And that's why we need to ground it a little bit, what needs to be done first, moving and so on. Certainly the word that's used is also just transition. It's not about tomorrow I become ESG. We need to have a path, we need to have a way and a journey forward. And I guess the world out there is looking towards a journey. And when a company takes that journey, in a certain period, 12-15 months, then they will be ESG compliant, maybe stage 1 and so on and so on. So that's something that needs to be little bit more done at a very basic level, and to drive that, and MNCs working with the business chambers, foreign business chambers over here in Malaysia are happy to do that, to drive towards that perspective about ESG application, as well as how we can come in as a government to facilitate these activities.
With all these achievements and with the surge of the amount of 300%, not 100, but not 200, but 300%, perhaps there were challenges that you faced, and this is not a one-man show or one-man effort. So what were the challenges that many not know about the achievements that you faced towards bringing the FDI, the amount of FDI for 2023?
Yeah. Each investment has a story on its own, right? And sometimes the story are very prolonged. Sometimes it's sweet as well. But it certainly gives us a lot of experience and perspective about what we can do and what we want to do. Top on the agenda for me is something that Malaysia have also mentioned, including by the Prime Minister, is to continue driving ease of doing business, right? When companies come in, if the condition or the perspective of doing a process says that you will get a feedback or an answer in 14 days, let us ensure that we do that, right? It's not about speed, but it's about certainty, right? And that's probably where we needed to integrate a lot more. Same time, approach as a country, meaning we know there are various levels of approvals by the authorities. There needs to be a clear objective that the faster we facilitate investment, the faster jobs will be created. When jobs are created, economic spillover are evident across the cities, the towns in Malaysia, right? So all these are uncommunicated in that respect. So that's something that we see our partner agencies are working on. We are confident, we are optimistic. Same time, it's very encouraging that many ministries, including our ministry, are doing industry engagement to really address certain topics, to see if we need any policy change and what can we do more to facilitate this type of investments. So that's important. the topic about renewable energy, that's something important too, where we need to also give a little bit more of that just transition phase. When an investor comes in, by the year 2025, I need this X amount of RE. Is that available? So that's probably something that we need to work in the longer trajectory, for them to be able to make better decisions, and also for them to have that comfort that they are investing at the right point in time. Those facilitation, the energy mix and so on will come into play too. So those kind of optimism I see, which were part of challenges over time, but we are committed, we are optimistic. The ministry have been instrumental in helping to chart the direction led by the Minister, Tengku Zafrul, and that has been important to have or to create that confidence and how we can work out some of the issues and improve further.
Amazing. But looking forward, I think this is a favorite question of yours, perhaps some vision or mission, perhaps the goal for next year. What are the digits, if you can share?
Yeah, this is a very difficult question. Yeah, very difficult question. Simply because if I rewind to today and imagine today is March 2023, we never expected to achieve that number, right? But with the diligence and the work done by the team, have produced tremendous results. We have an important and very strong pipeline, very varied and well across all the regions. So that's interesting. Sometimes it's a matter about timing. An investor wants to decide now or decide later. So that's something that we cannot control. But we are optimistic. Which also the thing that I like to bring a point on. Many of the hardware investments are done over the past 2-3 years, right? Especially in the data center space. Right? Now, how can we leverage on these data centers, right? And this is about brains. It's not about infrastructure and activity per se. Now, how can we leverage and work with these MNCs to have their exploration of technology from Malaysia? Tying up with academia, tying up with industry practices, and to drive this agenda forward. And to me, we are best positioned because Malaysia will assume the chairmanship of ASEAN next year. We have to work in building up the momentum, and certainly with the chairmanship of ASEAN in 2025, bring big agendas to the table. How can we better position Malaysia? How can we create a more conducive ASEAN as an economic destination? And putting all this perspective, working together with MNCs, local companies, to drive investments into the country.
All right, that was nice to speak with the CEO of InvestKL, Dato' Muhammad Azmi Zulkifli, and we hope that we can maintain the attractiveness of Malaysia to attract more FDIs in the years forward, and especially to, and most importantly, to actually achieve 35 billion ringgit by 2030. Am I right? And as well to drive economy, drive investments, and to the greater KL, the heart of a regional hub.
Terdapat sedikit